And hello there, and good afternoon as usual. It's Wednesday and it's 4:15, and you are very welcome to the How to Stay Sane webcast. Um, we are broadcasting live right now on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook, and I think on Periscope. Although I think Periscope's about to go in the next month or so. But anyway, we're still on Periscope today. Anyway, you're all very welcome. Come in, come in, come in. Those of you who will watch back at a later stage, you're equally also welcome. Thank you for joining us. As I say every week, if you are enjoying this series of webcasts, you could do me the great favor of spreading the word a little bit and sharing the links across the social media platforms. All of the previous episodes are up on my website, which is barbarascully.com, and this episode will join the rest of them tomorrow so that you can look back at them at any stage you like. So here in Dublin, it's funny, when I started this series in November, it was nearly dark at this time. So there's a bit of an outstretch. I can see the blue sky outside, although we're still in Dublin waiting for the snow, which seems to have gone AWOL completely. Although many of us this week have been introduced to a phenomenon known as graupel. There you go, a new word, which is defined as soft hail or snow pellets. But in reality, they are horrible little stingy balls of ice that would take the face off you. And that's all we've gotten instead of the snow, but maybe tonight. Anyway, I hope you're warm and you're cozy wherever you are and have something maybe nice to drink. And I hope you'll enjoy the next 30 minutes with us. My guest today, who you can see here beside me, is retired Army Captain Dr. Tom Clonan, a security analyst who will be familiar to you from both radio and television. He's also a columnist, he's a lecturer, he's a feminist, he's an advocate for disability and for equality, and an all-around fairly sound kind of a chap. So welcome, Mr. Dr. Clonan. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thanks, Barbara. Yeah, that's a very generous introduction. I'm kind of looking over my shoulder. Is there another Tom Clonan somewhere? It's all those headings. I love your teal paint. Is that the right word? Is that the right color? Teal.
Yeah, do you know the amount of people who've asked me after this and have sent me messages saying, "What's the color on your walls?" I think teal more or less describes it, but the story is that when we painted this room about a year, 2 years ago maybe, and we were looking to go a little bit dark. And one of my very close friends lives across the road, and her husband is a builder. They had this color in their house, and I was like, "Oh, that's the color. I really would like something like that." And Robbie said, "Geez, I think I have a tin of that left, or 2 tins of that left. You're welcome." I never chose it. It kind of the generosity of friends.
Very good, because it's like you're coordinated with your outfit, and like
well, do you know, Tom, I'm always coordinated. I don't know why that should be of any surprise to you whatsoever.
I'm under pressure now. Plain white background. Anyway,
listen. I know one of the many hats that you wear is that of a lecturer in what used to be DIT and is now TU Dublin. And I know from having 2 daughters who are doing online college at the moment, and the constant kind of refrains of "this is shit" and "I hate it" and "I hate doing it this way." But I can't, and I mean, I have sympathy for that. But I can't imagine it's much fun for you guys either, for those delivering the lectures, to be doing everything virtually.
Oh, well, look, I mean, at least I don't have a cat face. So it's been a bit of a, like the Texas lawyer who appeared at a court proceedings with a cat filter. I'm lucky because I have 3 teenagers and a 20-year-old in the house. So they can help me with the technical side of things, especially my 13-year-old. So, I mean, the first thing I'd say, Barbara, it's an absolute privilege to be able to work during COVID.
Yeah, true.
To have the privilege of being able to do lectures. But yeah, look, I feel sorry for the students. I feel sorry for them at the best of times, having to listen to me for 2 hours straight, lecturing them about X, Y, and Z. But they're missing out on the campus experience. And I mean,
yeah,
the important thing about college is the friends you make and the social interactions, and all of that life experience is on hold. I mean, the only positive thing about it is that I suppose everybody is in the same boat. And actually, TU Dublin, we have a lot of international students. And in the first semester there before Christmas, a lot of the students were here in Dublin. And actually, a lot of them have gone home. So they're all in class, but they're on camera somewhere else. They're in India or in continental Europe somewhere, or I was talking to a student there this afternoon who's actually from the United States, from Philadelphia, but she's with a family friend in Edinburgh. So, you know, it's tough for them, but yeah, it is what it is. As I was saying to you before we, I mean, I'm conscious that the media discourse about this lockdown in particular and what's going to happen next, the media discourse, I suppose, understandably, is very negative, and it's very bleak, and people, I think, are really at the limit of the elastic limit of their kind of tolerance for all of this. It's a tough time, but I'm more optimistic. I don't think we will be forever in endless series of lockdowns. I think this could be, if not the last, one of the lastest lockdowns. I don't think we're going to be back in this space again for such a prolonged period of time once we begin to emerge.
God, I hope not. I really hope not.
I really hope not. So. You know, I wouldn't think so. I'd be optimistic. I mean, when you think about it, this time last year, you know, we were just getting more and more
blissful ignorance, Tom. We were all in blissful ignorance of what was coming down the track.
Exactly this time last year, you had the school trips to the Italian and Swiss and the ski trips, and we were kind of just beginning to hear of families that had kids who had to go into isolation. That was just exactly this time last year. And now we have not just one, but 5, 6, 7 viable vaccines. That's an extraordinary leap forward. Yeah. And I know that in relation to the medical science, because there's somebody in the family here who's a medical doctor, and the developments will help. Just that rapid pace of development, particularly the RNA vaccines, will help things like Ebola, malaria, cancer treatments. So it is a really, really positive news story. This is a tough moment, but I think we'll see a big acceleration in the rollout of the vaccines as more become available, as more are approved by the European Medicines Agency. So the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which should be approved in March, it's a one-shot, one-jab deal. You're done. It'll be rolled out pretty quickly, and I'm hoping that by Easter things will look a lot more positive. And as more and more people are vaccinated, those vulnerable groups, you're going to see a reduction then in admissions to hospitals.
And a loosening of restrictions, hopefully, then as well.
And it just the picture is going to lift soon enough. I think some of the messaging has been negative, but like, I'll tell you what though, you know, with my experience in journalism, I remember when I was security analyst for the Irish Times from 2001 to 2016. So for 15 years, writing for the Irish Times, you know, pitching every week, you know, 2-3 big features on the global war on terror or terrorism, the invasion of Iraq, all like really bad news stories. But I remember I had contact with the US Embassy here in Dublin, and they were telling me about infant mortality rates in Afghanistan had plummeted. They had really fallen, and survival rates for infants was greatly enhanced. Millions and millions of Afghan girls and young women were going into full-time education, into employment, were being empowered. And I remember pitching this really good news story to the foreign editor, and the foreign editor went, no, we don't kind of, there's no kind of market. There isn't really a market for good news. So what we're seeing at the moment is, because of the inherent news values in bad news, just a kind of an emphasis or a focus on things like delays in production of the vaccine, which actually is in order that they can step up the production of the vaccine. Other stories like the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine has now been, Pfizer have released the, I don't know what you'd call it, the patent or the formula to Novartis, to Sanofi, 2 massive pharmaceutical producers in Europe. They're allowing them to produce their vaccine, and those agreements are signed in the last couple. So you know, the picture isn't as bleak perhaps as some of the reports might suggest, and I think we will find our way out.
I think most people are just have the impression, you know, we're hoping, and I think from what you've said, what I would take away is that hopefully things will start to gather pace soon, you know, that these things will start to mean that we can actually see changes. Because I think one of the things that frustrates a lot of people at this stage is the fact that we seem to be like going around in circles. And we, you know, most Joe Soaps can't really see where the progress is yet. But I hope you're right. And I mean, obviously, you know, the fact that there will be more companies producing these vaccines should hopefully mean that we'll be able to roll them out quicker. And as you say, maybe by Easter, the whole picture will look a whole lot better.
It'll look very different. And like Barbara, like one of my sons, Owen, he's doing his Leaving Cert this year. He's a wheelchair user. He's got a neuromuscular disease. He's got about 20% to 30% lung function. And he attends the full respiratory clinic in Vincent's Hospital just up the road from here. If he got COVID, it would be catastrophic for him. I don't know. His chances of survival would be very slim. And we've got one the family going into the hospital situation every day, treating patients with COVID. And so we've had to deal with that risk every day since March 12th of last year when Leo gave his speech. And it's a drip effect. And, you know, I'm kind of, you know, like everybody else in the country, I'm worried about when we're going to get out of this lockdown and the acceleration of the vaccine program. So we really have a very serious concern. We've got a vulnerable person in the house, but we try to stay positive. He's in great form. He's kind of praying for predicted grades in the Leaving Cert. He thinks that means he doesn't have to study. You know, I hear him in the mornings. He puts on his speaker, and I hear him singing in the morning when I leave him in the shower for a bit just to soak up the water. And I hear him singing like life goes on. We're going to come out this on the other side. Like I know for a fact that people like Paul Reid, the CEO of the HSE, people like Brian McCrath, Professor Brian McCrath from DCU, who's head of the vaccination task force, they're really, really good people. And they are, I know, so when I worry about Owen, I know that there are very, very good people who are working really, really hard on this. And I take great comfort in the fact that the GPs are now involved. They're rolling out the AstraZeneca vaccination. And once they flex their muscles and do the learning curve on this in the next couple of weeks, when the other vaccines come on stream and it'll be very, very quick. I mean, people need to remember in 2009, something like I think it was 22% of the population got the swine flu jab in something like 2 weeks because it was available. So, you know, we've been here before in the not too distant past. We'll get out of it. Anyway, there you go. No medical qualification, but it's just, I suppose it's part of the discipline. Like, you know, one of the things that I appreciate from my time in the army was that, like, you have to think on your feet about a threat or about a crisis. How do you deal with a threat? How do you manage that threat? And, you know, when you're in a hostile environment, you can't turn around and ask a threat expert for their advice. It's up to you. You got to make your own decisions. You got to try and make sense of the information that's out there. So I'm optimistic.
Very good. That's good enough for me. I was looking away there. You mentioned a cat a minute ago, and I was I've just been joined.
Oh, very good. Very good.
By one of mine. I was just hoping she was going to stay there. That's Mabel. Listen, tell me about Leeson Street.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, I feel guilty. No, definitely this lockdown is worse than any other. So, to kind of try and cope with the stress of the confinement of lockdown, one of the great things is having 2 dogs and a cat in the house. So I take the dogs out every day for the same walk. We go out in the morning. So what we do is we replicate the school run, and we go up. There's a lovely family-run business up the road from us, Gleason's Pub on Booterstown Avenue. So we go up there every morning and get a coffee. And actually, I meet quite a lot of the other parents on the school run. I meet quite a lot of the mums. And just in the morning, you know, we were talking about the lockdown and will it ever end, and, you know, the new variants. And I said, well, actually, and I regret saying this now, I said, because of the new developments in the vaccines, there's going to be a phased reopening of Leeson Street for the over 50. And so Leeson Street will open up for the over 50s, starting.
Yay.
Well, immediately all the coffee cups went down, and I saw a look of desperation, a glint of a small little window of opportunity. And then I'm only making this up, but that's where we're at. Like, I'm just.
I think anybody in their 50s, the mere mention of Leeson Street will give anybody who is in their 50s and grew up in Dublin and came of age in Dublin will be having all kinds of flashbacks to cheap bottles of wine and raids when you got locked outside into the yard and kind of creepy guys and tiny dance floors and
Well, whatever about young people, watch out. The over 50s will be elbowing their way past you to the bars and the nightclubs when this thing opens up again. I think people, I'm just looking forward to that on a serious note, like people being able to let off a bit of steam. And I'd say to people as well, don't be hard on yourselves. I know, like I hear people say, oh, it's not a war. And, all we're being asked to do is to sit on the couch and stay within our 5K.
That drives me nuts.
This is a very, very stressful situation because I know myself from my own past, being in hostile environments. At least I knew the date that I was going to fly home to Ireland.
Yeah,
I was able to count down to the last day, and that's really, it's like coming to the end of a prison sentence. You knock up days, and you can cope with nearly anything, but not have an exit date is the hard part. And what I would say to people, if you're finding it tough, don't feel guilty. Don't beat yourself up. Talk to somebody, and know that there is actually a day when this will be over, and we are actually counting down closer and closer to that day. But above that, don't feel guilty or feel embarrassed about finding this tough. Everybody's finding it tough.
Or about wanting to get back, as you clearly do, to Leeson Street at 2 a.m. in the morning. And as Carol Whelan has just said, having dodgy curries at 2 a.m.
Yeah, God be with the days. And sticky carpets. Your shoes sticking to the carpet. Yeah. But
and very dodgy men. Tell me, one of the things that we do on this is we talk about books. Are you a reader? Do you read? And what do you read?
Oh, yeah. And that's, I would say, number one, the family, keeping me sane. I have to say that. They might be able to hear me. Number two is definitely reading. And then the dogs. Having the animals has been great.
Huge.
For all of our sanity, especially the teenagers. But so I'm a great fan of the library system. And I would say to anybody, join your local library. And I've been able to do click and collect, well, just up until this pretty restricted lockdown. So just around about Christmas time, you're able to borrow 12 to 14 books. So I've been reading through the lockdown. And I know you're going to ask me about a book. So the last book I read, I've just finished it, is a book by Rose Tremaine, the Gustav Sonata. Brilliant book. It's a few years old. It's 2016, but it's just Central Europe, Switzerland, Austria, Vienna, cafe society, hotel. It's travel. It's been able to just sit down with the book and then leave the house, just through reading.
What's the book called again? Because I've read Rose Tremaine before and I like her.
Yeah, it's called the Gustav Sonata. Sonata. Really great book, and
you'd highly recommend it.
I would, yeah, and because of the work that I do, up until between 2017 and 2020, I was working in Vienna. I'd say I was in Vienna about 8 times in a row, and I was sitting at an outdoor cafe, as you can in continental Europe. It was September. It was about 28 degrees centigrade. And I was having a glass of wine.
You can do that here now. Well, you can, but we're not locked down. This is the first winter Irish people have ever sat outside when they could to drink coffee, but carry on.
Yeah, you need to have your pajamas on under your clothes, though. You'd be frozen.
And your hot water bottle. Yeah.
I was sitting in this cafe out in the old town, near the Stephankirche in the center of Vienna. It's the most beautiful place, Central Europe. Having a glass of wine, thinking, I'm getting a bit fed up with Vienna. I've been here 8 times in a row. Now I'm thinking about this, going, what I wouldn't give, So when I'm reading, it's like, that moment when you sit in the plane and they finish
Yes.
seeing to the point where they're going to take off, and then you get that big whoosh, and you start to fly down the runway. I'm just really looking forward to that, and that moment when you feel the wheels lift off the runway. So we're heading in
I
that direction.
know.
We're heading in that direction. Back to
Good. Actually, I always give where I'm going to give my book recommendation this week, which I've nearly finished, is Sam Blake, who's Vanessa O'Loughlin. A lot of people will know her, who runs writing.ie, writes out to the name of Sam Blake, and this is her latest one called The Dark Room. And like you, one of my favorite places, which I hope to be able to get to during the summer, is West Cork. And again,
oh
I
yeah,
find that I'm really attracted at the moment to books that are bringing me to places that are completely like are foreign, or places that I'm kind of vaguely familiar with. And this is set in a fictional part of West Cork, and it's a galloping, like it's a good gallopy story. I've flown through it and I've nearly finished it. So definitely, if you want a good story, well told, and set in West Cork, I definitely would recommend that. Are you somebody who listens to podcasts, Tom?
yeah. I've been listening to a few now. So like probably like everybody else, I listened to that excellent RT one about the Nobody Zone, about the Irish serial killer in the London Underground network. Yeah,
Oh yes, I did
the
recognize the
Nobody
name.
Zone.
Yes.
It's really good. It's very good. But I've been listening. So I do all the cooking in the house. Just the way things
Oh,
worked out.
don't you?
And I listen to when I'm getting the dinner on now. I listen to Louis Theroux's "Grounded." I don't know if you heard that.
No, no.
Yeah,
I
it's
never know
very
whether I
good.
like him or not. He's one of these people that I kind of like him, but the other part of me wants to smack his face. So I'm never sure whether I'm a
Yeah.
fan or not. But anyway,
Okay. Well, actually, do you know, I'd recommend before you listen to Louis Theroux's "Grounded," listen to
yeah,
Louis Theroux's "Desert Island Disc" interview, where he talks
okay.
about life and his childhood and how he ended up doing the work that he does. And it puts him in it's a very good context to put him in. And then the Grounded series of interviews are very good. I listened to the Ruby Wax one last night, and it's kind of car crash, so which is why it's so good. And
Brilliant.
there's a lot of disclosure there, and she does not like Louis Theroux, and is
Okay.
very clear on that point. And then the conversation takes an interesting kind of direction, as it were. So it's a good listen.
Oh,
Um,
that's a good tip right there then. Yeah, that sounds really good.
yeah,
I
yeah,
love watching interviews when you know somebody doesn't like either the interviewer or it's the other way around. I love picking up on that. We were
yeah,
watching something the other night, myself and himself, and I remember saying to him, "Oh, he doesn't like," and I was saying he doesn't like her, she doesn't like him, and he was like, "How do you know that?" And I'm going, "I just know that definitely they don't like each other for sure."
yeah.
So
And
so
it's interesting
that's a good.
because one, like I was listening to the Desert Island Discs. So the BBC have put up on the podcast Desert Island Discs interviews going right back to the 70s. And
Oh wow, okay.
it's amazing listening to interviews in the 70s and even in the early 80s, because it's so formal. It's like, and now we're going to talk to the Right Honorable John Sir James. And then they have these really like polite, sort of formal Q&A sessions. And then so you fast forward to the 21st century and where we are now, and you hear, actually, do you know, some of it as well makes you realize how good Irish radio is, generally speaking, and how
Yeah,
good
generally, yeah.
Irish, podcasts like this, how good we are conversationally, and how we're able to sort of elicit things from one another that maybe you wouldn't otherwise say. But it's yeah. So I've been enjoying those
I have
podcasts.
to say on that subject, I think as everybody knows, this is no news, but I mean it's been widely commented on online, particularly, is that Tommy Tiernan's show on RTE, his interviews are just absolutely gobsmackingly brilliant. I think. And unique in the landscape, as somebody who genuinely seems to be interested in people and genuinely doesn't have a fear, as a lot of television presenters do, of a gap or a silence. And he's just managing to elicit incredible stories from people. And I have to
Yeah.
say, I think they will be something that will be looked back on, I'd say, as kind of master classes in how to interview. Just a couple of things. Eleanor Fitzsimon says that she's reading a book by Ali Smith. There, but for the dinner party guest locks himself in the host's spare room for weeks. That's an interesting one. And then Sarah Gendron says, just read Say Nothing by Patrick Radden Keefe about the Troubles, a brilliant read. So there's 2 more suggestions. Are you a Netflix watcher?
Yeah, definitely, yeah. And
Did you
go on, yeah.
Bridgerton? Did you watch Bridgerton? I have to ask everybody, did they watch
I did
Bridgerton? Or is
actually,
it
yeah.
only women who watch Bridgerton?
But Bridgerton was the only one that got my daughter downstairs. I'd say, so she's 16, and she came down to watch it, and it's the first time she sat and watched television with me, I'd say, since probably about 4 or 5 years. So that was
an interesting watch with your parents.
Yeah, I know, yeah. But like, I made lots of tea. I went out for lots of meals. I left the room very often to go out and make tea, and I can tell by the sound that when it's safe to come back in. And she was just there under a blanket looking at me. Go out and get another glass of wine. But so that was good. So actually, at the moment, I've just finished I don't know if you've seen Deutschland. So you can now get Channel 4's box sets.
Yes.
Put your phone onto the TV. Absolutely brilliant. So just finished watching Deutschland 86. Now, I have to explain this to you. You know, this is about the East German Stasi before the Berlin Wall came down. And
right.
It's a spy drama. It's soap opera. It's got really strong female characters. So the spies on the East German side are these East German women, and on their counterparts in West Berlin are these extraordinary female spies as well. And it's really funny. It's really rich. So there's a lot of commentary in it about family dynamics, about the state, and it's just the music, and it brings you right back to the 80s, Barbara. They've got a great sound.
Well, there's a whole team going through this there for you. You are like, we started off talking about Gleason Street, and you're now telling me about another series that's going to bring you right back to the 80s.
Yeah, and also there's a lot of, I'm sure a lot of people have seen It's a Sin. Have you seen that?
Oh. I just finished it the other night. Stunning.
Really wonderful, and very evocative of that time, just the mid 80s, when and they touch on that in Deutschland 86. So I'm not going to tell you, there's lots of sex in it. I mean, an awful lot of sex in it. Violence, targeted assassinations, but it's very, very funny, and the fun humor in it is kind of understated. It's just like, it's really great, and it takes you completely out of where we are today.
And that's good. I must watch that.
They've just released Deutschland 89, so Deutschland 86 leaves you on a real cliffhanger, and you're wondering, will they, won't they? I'm not going to give any plot reveals away. And so they've just released 89, and it'll be interesting to see where that goes.
And what happened to 87 and 88?
Well, obviously I think there was 83, 86, 89. Not giving you. I don't know.
3 years at a time. Another one.
Anyways, I can't remember. I can only remember about a third of the 80s anyway, so maybe they're
I'm not commenting. I've just finished watching, which I did enjoy. Now, it wasn't amazing, but I did enjoy it. Beautifully filmed, and again, very evocative. Now, I don't obviously have a time I don't remember. Summer of Rockets, set in the 50s in London and in the UK. Beautifully acted, beautifully filmed. Can't really give away anything either, but it's definitely one that's worth watching. And of course, one of my favorite series, which I only discovered when I got to the end of it, that there wasn't going to be any more made, was Call My Agent. You haven't watched that, have you?
Yeah.
Oh, that is such a great series.
Mm-hmm.
It's such a great series. Listen, tell me, just before we finish up, you mentioned that moment when you're on an aircraft and it's taken off down the runway, and Ireland is about to sink and you're off somewhere. Where is on your hit list once we are allowed to travel abroad? Where is it like you're thinking, I need to get back there? I'm trying to get back there.
Well, okay, so I would love to go anywhere in the Mediterranean. I mean, Italy or the Aegean, like just somewhere where it's warm. I mean, I think that's what Irish people most. I mean, so we went to we were very lucky. We got to West Cork last summer, and it was really lovely. But it was the first time my kids have ever been on holidays in Ireland, and they were kind of going, "What's the story? What's the story with?" Because I think they expected when we got to West Cork that there'd be sunshine, but it was just lovely.
Well, that's Cork people for you. Cork people would sell it that Cork's a completely different country than the rest of us.
And
so
to my eternal shame, my daughter was in the back of the car on her phone, and I said to her, there's a dart station in this little town out past Ballydehob. And she took out her earpods and went, "Oh, really? Well, I'll tell you what, you leave me here and come back and collect." And then my youngest fella said, he's pulling your leg. Dublin is 200 miles away. And then she kind of, I actually felt guilty. But no, I'd love anywhere hot. And but really, when all this is over, one of the things I'd really love to do, I'd love to go back to the Middle East. I'd love to go back to Beirut. I hope.
Have you ever been back? Have you ever been back since you served there?
Yeah, I've been back. I've back to Syria and Iraq not so long ago, but Beirut is, haven't had time to think over the last year. Beirut is such a beautiful city. I say to anybody, any art, get to Beirut because it's just it's like it's the sort of the end of the Silk Route and the opening into Europe, and the Lebanese and Arab cultures, they're so welcoming. It's just so beautiful. Lots of bars and restaurants and clubs. You can go skiing during the day up in the mountains and then come back down and swim in the Mediterranean. It's just such a beautiful place. And I think things are beginning to settle down there in Lebanon again. And when this is all over, that's one of the things I want to do is get back to Beirut. And
excellent. Yeah. Well, if that's a nice hopeful note on which to end, because for many of us, I suppose, a bit like what foreigners think about Belfast, Beirut is synonymous with violence and upheaval and all the rest of it. But anybody who speaks about it as a city says it was known as the something of the Middle East, wasn't it? It was compared
to Paris in the Middle East.
Paris,
it's the only city I've ever been in. When you're walking home at 2:00 in the morning, they'll actually slow down in the cars.
Leeson Street.
Yeah, looking for Leeson Street. You ask them, where is Leeson Street in Beirut? But they slow down in the cars and they roll down the windows in the big Mercedes and they say, "Are you okay? Are you all right? Do you need a lift? Do you know where you're?" Like, it's such an incredibly friendly city, and the people are beautiful there. It's just it's kind of the last place I think you'll get a little bit of a culture shock, because the way with globalization, where it's kind of, you don't really get that big rush as much anymore, or if you do, you have to travel a very, very long way. But like Beirut's only 4 hours, 4.5 hours, and you're there. It's just
you're there, as near as the Canary Islands, as near as the Canary Islands. Listen, Tom, thank you so much for joining us. That was great crack. Loved your suggestions, which I will put up on my website tomorrow, along with the recording of this video. You've been very good to share all of that with us and for giving me your time. I really appreciate it, Tom. Thank you very much. And stay well.
Thanks, Barbara.
Stay safe.
I'll see you out in Cabinteely before long. Once the 5K restriction is gone.
Absolutely. I might even buy you a cup of coffee.
Yeah, for a socially distanced coffee. We'll see you then.
Deal. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As I say, this will go up tomorrow on my website. And please, if you've enjoyed it, share the links. That would be doing me a great favor. I'll be back here again next Wednesday at 4:15 for more how to stay sane in a pandemic. But for now, take care, mind yourselves, stay well, and see you next week. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks, Barbara. See you soon.
Thanks. Bye.